Greater Brisbane this week, a flurry of construction projects, especially in inner suburbs, but also questions around whether it's actually increasing the number of homes. A rail network still under pressure, but also major upgrades and long-term improvements still moving ahead in the background. And new youth crime laws have passed, marking a significant shift in policy with strong views on both sides about what that means for safety and prevention. So there's a lot going on, but it's not all negative, and this week's update is really about what's changing, what's improving, and where the pressure points still are. The sponsor for this video is YB Painting, and I'll let you know about the discount they're offering viewers later. I also have tickets to give away for an upcoming film festival, so stick around for those details as well. This week, there's a really clear theme running through a lot of these stories. There's a lot of activity, a lot of construction, and a lot of planning, but when you look a bit closer, it doesn't always translate into the outcomes people might expect. So this one's really about understanding that gap between growth, pressure, and what actually changes on the ground. Let's start with housing. Looking at housing this week, the overall picture hasn't shifted dramatically. Median asking rents are now sitting around the mid-$600 range per week for both houses and units across Brisbane, and vacancy rates are hovering around 0.5%. To put that into perspective, a balanced market is usually closer to 2 to 3%. So at 0.5%, there's almost no slack in the system. Even a small increase in demand, whether that's population growth, migration, or people forming new households, can push prices up very quickly. But there's another layer to this that's becoming more visible. At the same time as these affordability pressures, Brisbane is also seeing strong growth at the top end of the market. Luxury apartment prices have jumped significantly over the past 12 months, with many new inner-city developments now sitting in the $2 to $5 million range, and some pushing well beyond that, driven largely by interstate buyers from higher-priced markets like Sydney and Melbourne, along with the smaller but growing level of international demand. That's a very different part of the market to where most of the pressure is being felt. So you've effectively got two markets moving in parallel: strong demand and price growth at the top end, while at the same time affordability remains a major challenge for many people trying to find a place to live. And that pressure is showing up in very real ways. In Redcliffe, a small encampment of people experiencing homelessness has grown from just a handful of tents to around 20 tents in a matter of weeks, with families among those now living there. Some residents say they've been on priority housing wait lists for up to 6 months, while still working and trying to maintain normal routines like school and employment. The site itself has no formal facilities, which has created concerns from nearby community groups and local businesses. The City of Moreton Bay says housing delivery is the responsibility of state and federal governments, while state housing teams say they've been engaging with people on site. So what we're seeing here is a system under strain in very practical and visible ways. And when we take a closer look at trends around home construction, things get interesting. Because despite all the cranes and construction activity across Brisbane, that doesn't necessarily mean more homes are being added. In low to medium density zones, which make up about 14% of Brisbane's residential land, construction has actually fallen from around 1,100 homes per year to fewer than 500. At the same time, builders are reporting a surge in knockdown rebuilds across suburbs like Ashgrove, Holland Park, Stafford Heights, and Tarragindi. In some cases, up to 95% of projects are now rebuilds rather than new builds. And most of these are still one house being replaced with one house. So even though land is being reinvested and upgraded, the number of dwellings isn't increasing. And that's where planning policy becomes critical. And speaking of planning decisions, if you're planning some painting work for your home or business, you really should get in touch with the sponsor of this video, YB Painting Services. They recently picked up 2 first and 3 second place awards at the Master Painters Australia Queensland Awards for 2025, which gives you an idea of the standard they're working at. They offer fixed pricing and a 5-year warranty on all their work, so you know exactly what you're getting up front. You can claim an exclusive 10% discount by scanning the QR code on screen or through the link in the video description. Brisbane City Council is now proposing changes that could allow more homes in low to medium density zones, including higher density, smaller lot sizes, and reduced parking requirements, with estimates suggesting this could enable up to 6,000 additional homes to be added to supply by 2032. But at this stage, those changes are still under review. So the key takeaway here is that the demand to build is already there, but how many homes actually get delivered depends on what's allowed. And when we do look at new supply coming through, it's very segmented. In Mango Hill, there are plans for around 116 townhouses aimed at providing more attainable housing in a fast-growing corridor. In West End, a smaller development of 30 apartments is moving ahead, but with prices ranging from roughly $1.8 million to over $2.2 million, targeting downsizers and higher-end buyers. And in Kangaroo Point, a proposed 15-storey building with around 52 units is being positioned as mid-market, which is a segment that's been relatively undersupplied. So even within new supply, we're seeing very different price points and target markets. And then at a much larger scale, there are some major transformation projects underway. In Woolloongabba, the long vacant Broadway hotel site, which I've covered previously, is now up for sale with approval already in place for a 34-storey tower with around 250 apartments, alongside restoration of the Heritage Pub. So the focus this time isn't the proposal itself, but the fact that a major pre-approved site is now on the market in a precinct that's set to transform over the next few years. And in Buranda, a major development has been redesigned to replace office space with around 300 new homes, reflecting how demand has shifted in the current market. And then behind all of this, there's the planning system itself. This week, questions have been raised about stormwater modelling guidelines used across Queensland. One contributor has argued that some assumptions may be overstating pollution levels, which could mean developers are being required to over-engineer solutions, increasing costs. The issue is now under review, but it highlights something important. A small technical inaccuracy like this, if confirmed, can flow through to higher building costs, and in some cases whether a project is viable in the first place. Moving on to transport, and the rail network has been under sustained pressure again this week. At the centre of it are ongoing negotiations between Queensland Rail and multiple unions. Some unions, including the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, are undertaking work bans and stoppages. Because certain work isn't being carried out, a backlog has developed, which has reduced the number of trains available. As a result, more three-car trains, which are effectively half-length services, are now running across the network. That means commuters are being squeezed into more crowded conditions, even when services are technically running. There have also been 29 signalling-related delays across 27 days, adding to the disruption. And there are warnings that if the industrial action continues, services could be further reduced or even cancelled. On a smaller note, there's been a new stop added to the Maroon Glider Route 61 in Paddington, improving access to Suncorp Stadium and the surrounding area. It's a relatively small change, but one that can make a big difference day to day. And an interesting insight into how people are parking in the city. Around 40% of drivers parking in Brisbane CBD aren't paying, often because they're staying within the 15-minute free window, which applies to over 7,500 on-street spaces. At the same time, Brisbane still has some of the highest parking costs in the country, with casual daily rates averaging over $80, according to Ray White. Looking at cost pressures, insurance claims in Queensland reached around $4.1 billion over the past year. Severe hailstorms alone caused around $1.78 billion in damage, more than Tropical Cyclone Alfred did. The average claim has also risen to over $16,000, which feeds directly into higher premiums. On the policy side, there's been a significant development this week with changes to youth crime laws which have passed through Parliament. The legislation adds 12 new offences, bringing the total under the Adult Crime Adult Time framework to around 45 offences. The new offences include things like riot, stalking and harassment, choking and strangulation in a domestic setting, administering poison with intent to harm, and conspiracy to commit murder. Since the policy was introduced, more than 4,000 young people have been charged with over 20,000 offences under it. The government says the changes are aimed at reducing crime and improving safety. However, some legal, medical, and community groups argue that expanding the laws doesn't address underlying issues like housing instability, mental health, and family violence. There are also calls for an independent review to assess how effective the policy is over time. And just quickly on the proposed e-mobility laws we spoke about last week, those are still going through committee hearings this week, with a report due to be tabled on the 8th of May, so more details still to come. There were also protests in Brisbane last weekend relating to Queensland's new hate speech laws, with more than 20 people arrested across 2 days of demonstrations near State Parliament. The arrests were linked to the use of 2 newly banned phrases, especially one talking about 2 bodies of water, which the government has restricted under legislation aimed at preventing hate speech and protecting the community. Protesters argue the laws go too far and risk limiting legitimate political expression, and are now planning a constitutional challenge. The government, however, maintains the laws are necessary to draw a clear line against language that could incite harm or division. So this is likely to remain an ongoing legal and political issue over the coming months. I'll be sharing in a video next week my own experience with the laws and how they impacted this YouTube channel in a very real way. And separately, rallies were held in Brisbane as part of a nationwide protest calling for stronger action on domestic and family violence. There are also questions this week around transparency at the Q, a $90 million greyhound racing facility near Ipswich, where a right to information request for thousands of internal documents relating to safety and animal welfare has been refused due to the resources required to process it. The regulator has said that the volume of material is significant, estimated to be between 8,000 and 15,000 documents, and that each document would need to be assessed individually, so no detail has been released about what those documents actually contain. Advocacy groups argue that the sheer number of documents is concerning in itself. Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds President Amy McMahon said it reinforces long-standing concerns about safety at the track, describing it as one of the most dangerous in the country and pointing to reports of injuries and deaths. But without access to the documents themselves, the full picture isn't clear at this stage. So the issue here isn't settled, but it does raise broader questions about oversight, transparency, and access to information around publicly funded facilities. Looking ahead, there are also some more forward-focused developments. The Australian Olympic Committee is planning a Brisbane office ahead of the 2032 Summer Olympics. And as part of Brisbane City Council's plans to build a legacy that will remain beyond the 2032 Games, there's also been community feedback shaping long-term legacy planning, with around 20,000 responses feeding into Brisbane City Council's Making Our Mark campaign. The top ideas include a citywide green grid of shaded walking and cycling links connecting venues and suburbs, a low-line concept to activate underused spaces under infrastructure such as elevated rail lines, expanded 24-hour precincts to support the nighttime economy, further rollout of Brisbane Metro bus services, and converting underused land into new urban sports and recreation spaces. This is a result of public voting on a set of quite specific ideas that are now expected to feed into a formal legacy plan later this year. On the industry side, a renewable diesel project at the Ampol Lytton refinery is being backed with $25 million in funding, with plans to produce around 20 million litres per year from 2028 using waste products like used cooking oils and animal fats. The fuel can be used in existing diesel engines, and the project is being positioned as a first step toward building a larger local biofuels industry and improving fuel security. And a new life sciences incubator has opened at QIMR Berghofer Medical Research Institute, providing purpose-built lab and office space for emerging biotech companies, while supporting collaboration between researchers, industry, and investors, and helping local innovations scale into global markets. And on a lighter note, upgrades are underway at the Brisbane Airport International Terminal, with 13 new and upgraded food and beverage outlets rolling out through 2027. That includes a new central dining precinct bringing together local brands and international options, along with expanded retail, as part of a wider transformation of the terminal to improve the experience for international travellers. And on the cultural side, the 2026 Queensland Music Awards were held last week, celebrating artists, venues, and institutions from across the state. Brisbane's Ballpark Music made history by taking up both Album of the Year and Highest Selling Album. Young Franco won the electronic category, Dami Im won the jazz category, Odd Mob was named Breakthrough Artist of the Year, and local radio station 4ZZZ received the Lifetime Achievement Award. The Tivoli was also named Metro Venue of the Year, which is a nice recognition of one of Brisbane's important live music venues. So after a lot of stories about housing, transport and planning, this is a reminder that Brisbane's identity is also shaped by its music scene, its venues, and the grassroots organisations that have supported local artists for decades. So overall this week, it's a really clear picture of where Brisbane is right now. There's growth, there's activity, but there's also constraints. Stick with the Brisbane channel and I'll help you stay across all of the changes as Greater Brisbane continues to evolve. And now to the giveaway. In May, the HSBC German Film Festival will be running from the 6th to the 27th, showcasing the very best in contemporary German language cinema. The 2026 program features a dynamic selection of films from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, including acclaimed titles from major international festivals such as Berlinale and Cannes. From compelling dramas and thought-provoking stories to lighter comedies and crowd pleasers, the festival offers a rich and diverse cultural experience. Whether you're a lover of film, language, or European culture, the HSBC German Film Festival is a wonderful opportunity to experience contemporary cinema from this vibrant region. And I have 5 double passes to give away, which you can use for the film of your choice. To enter, head to the Brisbane Channel's Instagram page, make sure you're following, like the relevant post, and tag one friend in the comment. If you're a channel member, let me know your YouTube username in your comment and I'll give you a bonus entry into the draw. Good luck. I'm not going to give my 2 cents on an issue this week. I'll save that for the video mid-next week on how the anti-hate speech laws have impacted this channel and may impact others living and working in this part of the world. But if you haven't seen the channel's first ever podcast where I had a chat with urban planner Dr. Tony Matthews about housing affordability, immigration, and balancing growth with maintaining character, you can check that out here. And here's last week's update in case you missed it. See ya.